Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrea Gasparova, and I, together with my classmates Laura Mayer and Ada Bonilla Duarte, will look into this week's topic of the Digital Responsibility course, which is law. We will talk about the internet and its four constraints. We will explain to what extent they are able to control the internet, identify the most powerful one, and explain why it has the power. We will start with a brief introduction to the topic of the regulation of the internet. Then we will explain each of the four constraints and conclude the presentation with an overview of all four of them. Internet is the most important, most used, and the most powerful media of our times. There are over 3 billion internet users in the world, and around 40% of the world population has an internet connection today. All of this has happened in only 20 years, since 1993, when only a 0.3% of the world population had an internet connection. The legislation of the usage of the internet has troubles keeping up with the growing number of users and the fast technological and economic development. The globalization makes the national and international law lose its power over the internet due to the increase in cross-border media networks, growth of the global market involving international organizations and corporations that use the internet for free communication through their own networks, and the contemporary legislation of privatization and deregulation of public goods and services. Due to the globalization, the national legislations are weak, and the individual states have only a limited power over the control of the internet. Moreover, there is a conflict between the government, corporate, technological, and self-regulatory control. This presentation will explain the actors controlling the internet, which are the legal control, internet community control, market control, and technological control.
The first constraint is legal control, also referring to legislation on internet activities. Generally, control is confined to national jurisdiction, but internet and its flows of information and communication are international and go across borders. Therefore, it is important to create international agreements or legislation on the use of internet and its boundaries. These are, however, hard to create, maintain, and enact. An example could be the attempt by some governments to exert control that can be more or less direct, with, for example, internet service providers. Although the author Van Dyke argues that these are not often effective, in the book Who Controls the Internet? Illusions of a Borderless World by Jack Goldsmith and Tim Wu, the authors list a series of controls or pressures imposed in countries' local intermediaries, usually at a national level. Some examples are Yahoo's forced restrictions on the sale of Nazi paraphernalia in France, or Google delisting websites devoted to hate speech and Nazi materials in France and Germany, or Saudi Arabia direct filters imposed on its internet service providers of websites containing pornography, gambling, interfaith dialogue, and discussions about how to circumvent filtering, or direct arrest of individuals involved, for example in the case of child pornography in the United States and the United Kingdom and Canada, or Chinese censorship, including complete blogs on many websites from outside China. The second constraint of Internet activities is often referred to as Internet community control. It is usually and incorrectly believed that the Internet had no central organization and had to be controlled from outside. However, the Internet started as a decentralized network for academics and for the American Departments of Defense and Commerce, who initiated its design, operation, and organization. Internet design has been enforced by the Internet community under the supervision of these American departments. The most important organization is the Internet Engineering Task Force, with more than 100 working groups taking care of Internet protocols and other standards, and which leading body is known as the Internet Architecture Board. There are further organizations such as the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, which decides which domain names and IP addresses can be used and registers the names worldwide. One more could be the Internet Society, which intended to be the future government of the global Internet community, dealing with policy aspects on Internet concerning technical, juridical, economics, and tax issues, as well as advising national government on these issues. The mission of these self-regulatory bodies is to work in the interest of Internet and its users. However, Internet nowadays does not consist of these self-regulatory bodies anymore, but includes millions of new groups, online forums, virtual communities, which rule their own matters of content with comparatively great freedom. In the 1990s, the participants of these online groups and their representatives held the view that Internet was creating a new type of virtual society or democracy. Commercial interests and governmental controls were therefore considered to be a threat.
The third constraint of the Internet is the market, which is also referred to as the private sector. With the rise of the e-commerce, new developments of software and legislation was needed in order to protect the general interest as well as the interest of businesses. The issue of criminal abuse and free downloads of source material with copyrights urged governments and businesses to take action. Secure payment, conditional access, and intellectual property rights were measurements implemented through legislations and technical development. But more important, in order to describe the market constraint of the Internet, is the influence of hardware and software and the commercial services on Internet activity and content. Search engines such as Google and Yahoo, Internet browsers such as Internet Explorer or Google Chrome, and operating systems and application software such as Windows have a great impact on users and are able to control the content of the Internet to their interest. An example is Microsoft. Microsoft developed the operating system Windows, which includes Windows Essentials such as the Internet browser, Internet Explorer. Considering that 90% of the Internet users is using Internet Explorer and Microsoft, the characteristics and the speed of software development by Microsoft has a crucial impact on the spread of viruses and computer hacking. Another example are the search engines Yahoo and Google. Yahoo and Google are also able to influence the users and therefore the Internet activity due to their system creating the list of hits. Commercial viable websites can be found on the first page, as they are able to pay for the space. According to Silverstein and Pink, 85% of all Internet users only look at the first page. Hence, the commercial viable websites become more and more popular. The fourth constraint of the Internet is the technological control. Van Dijk argues that this is the most powerful constraint. In order to understand how technology can control the Internet, it is essential to know the architecture of the Internet. The core of the Internet is a TCP/IP protocol, which enables its decentralized structure of end-to-end exchange and peer-to-peer networking. This architecture is increasingly important in order to control the Internet. Therefore, all parties try to manipulate the technical standards and protocols which are ruling the Internet activity in order to gain power. Based on the OSI model of network layers, Van Dijk describes the instruments which are controlling the Internet. The physical layer of networks describes all options connecting computers and other terminals and to get access to them and the network. The control currently comprises out of passwords, but for the future, biometric devices such as iris scan, fingerprint, or voice recognition will become increasingly important. These devices influence and control privacy, personal autonomy, and freedom on the Internet. The data link layer enables computers to communicate. In this layer, ATM is one of the control instruments which are built into the hardware. It is preferred by telecom companies and local area networks as it offers a more centralized control. The network and transport layer includes the decentralized TCP/IP protocol, which is the Internet we know it today. The protocol enables a relatively free and anonymous exchange of information and messages. This is predicted to change in the future as there are attempts to use the more centralized system from the telecom networks. This would provide more control for certain parties, but that would mean a loss of freedom for users. In the session layer, there are visible control instruments such as user identification and message authentication. These include username and password, digital signatures, and certificates, but there are also invisible codes used in government, corporate, and private interest in order to trace Internet use. These include cookies and log files. Even spyware is used by some organizations to gather information about Internet users. In the presentation layer, the users can protect themselves with encryption from spyware. In the application layer, software control is included. An example for this would be Microsoft, which imposes obligatory registration of software. All these technological tools are powerful instruments to control the Internet. Van Dijk argues that there is a shift from legislative and Internet community control towards a market and technical rule of the Internet. Technological control can be used by all parties and is very effective. Hence, it is the most powerful constraint.
To summarize, in this presentation, we talked about the 4 actors that control the Internet, or, in different words, the 4 constraints of the Internet. We explained the legal control, the Internet community control, the market control, and the technological control. In the 21st century, there has been a shift in the control in the Internet from law and Internet community to the market and the technological standards. The governments and corporations are trying to strengthen their efforts in controlling the Internet. The technological control is the most powerful constraint due to several layers of control of the Internet traffic by the governments and the corporations, such as application, presentation, session, transport, network, data link, and physical layer. These are powerful tools to control the usage of the Internet, and together they can change it from a free user-controlled tool to a corporate and government-controlled media.